Way we go.
So, David, so welcome to everyone. And we are going to divide our time today into three kind of very distinct parts. The first is to give you somewhere between 7 to 10 minutes of just some very surface level information. Then we're going to open up the discussion to the group. Seeing as we have people who are here, and we're actually quite a large group, 54 is a big number of people. If you have questions, to put them in the chat, and then we can field them. You'll see that the information we're going to give you is going to be part. I'm going to call it psycho-spiritual, come theological, and then David will give us sort of the introductory from the ground up tech responses to that. And then once the discussion goes, we have Gary with us, like I said, who has a practical application. It's always nice to have an object lesson. So let's get going. The goals for today's discussion: how the need, we're going to discuss just a little bit about how the need to feel connected is showing itself in concrete terms right now. And we're going to talk about communication strategies that fit for every congregation. Okay. So we'll look into the spirituality of staying connected. The one thing that I want to everybody to understand is that the focus of today's discussion and the direction that it's going is to say that the strategy comes first, right? The cart before the horse, right? So the horse is the strategy and the cart is the technology. And so we have a bias that says every community needs a communication strategy, and then tech is brought in to augment that. Can I have the next slide, please? Nope, go back to the back one, David. What we're not going to discuss today is turning your church into a full video facility. One thing that I want to mention about that is that the region has put together a rather comprehensive document about copyright. Anybody who is sitting here in our discussion or is contemplating going into broadcasting, like the collective I'm part of, copyright is a major thing. The other thing is that what's not for today's discussion, although we'll take note of it, is that if you're in a congregation that really has pastoral oversight type issues because you're struggling to figure out what a common strategy should be, maybe you're in a multi-point charge and there are different needs and different points, we'll take note of those today. I will take note of them, and I will make sure that I will bring it back to the executive so that your specific needs can be addressed. Okay, hopefully that's clear so far. All right. Now, strategies themselves, and I've just seen that Anita has come in. We'll let her come in and get that off the screen. Any communication strategy should focus on three things. And Michael mentioned it today, right? He talked about getting back into our own tradition, our core story, and the values that are attached to it. Secondly, and this is particularly true during the pandemic, the messages that we are sending out from our congregations need to have a personalized tone to them, as in from me to you. And the third is that where those personal messages from me to you are then directing us, is that they are community oriented. You are part of a larger whole. There's a wonderful expression that says if you want to get there fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So that's the kind of thinking that we're talking about. Next slide, please. The theology that is underpinning all of this, Takui had asked me to take a theological look at it, is twofold. The first is that in the desert, God promised to guide the people by a pillar of smoke during the day and a pillar of smoke at night. Now, in talking to a very good friend of mine who's got a lot of experience in rural to semi-rural ministry and the disconnectedness that that causes, and then in the big city where I am here in Ottawa of 1 million people, where city causes isolation, he said, there was a promise to the promised land. And I think, one of the questions that we're struggling with is what is the promise that we're headed towards? Michael mentions that too. What if this is not going to get any better? So how that translates sort of psycho spiritually is that when we don't know exactly where the journey is leading us, We travel one leg of the journey at a time. And if we make the mistake of looking too far ahead, that's when we become overwhelmed. Next slide, please. The other thing, and this is to repeat this idea that you need a strategy before you worry about how you're going to incorporate tech. Well, God gave Moses tech. He gave him 2 tablets. He went up the mountain, he came down with 2 tablets, and he wrote down 10 rules that can be really boiled down into 3 groupings. One, be mindful of cultivating your relationship to God. Two, be mindful of being true to yourself and the values of your family. And three, be mindful of being true to your community and build up its values. Every communication strategy, theologically, in terms of a spiritual community, this is particularly true of the church, needs to be along those lines. And finally, as you're wondering, is my messaging, is it covering all the bases? Um, 5 basic things that we all need to hear: that we're not alone, that we're loved, that we belong, that we're children of God, and that we're useful. So if you're sitting there, oh, geez, I don't know what to say, just ask yourself, how am I going to tell people they're not alone? How am I going to tell people they're loved? How am I going to tell them they belong? How am I going to tell them they're children of God? How am I going to tell them they're useful? You can do that in 5 sentences and bang, there's a message. So I'm going to then transfer it over to David. And David, you're up.
Okay, well, the basic that Eric has already mentioned is the written material. This is, we call it what you want, snail mail or anything. We all have a way of communicating to the people within our congregation so that they aren't feeling left out, that they are loved, and we care for them. Most people have a telephone, and there is a way of communicating one to one with checking on people. How are they doing? Are they having difficulty? Do they need some help? There is also a system that is out there now, sermon by phone. So they can call in and hear a message of the day, or they can hear the sermon. The technology for a lot of our area is making use of Facebook, YouTube, and Zoom Live. We're doing Zoom right now. You are all part of a meeting that there's in excess of 175 people who are sharing the good news. The sermon by phone I talked about. There is a system which is available to you. It's cost $10 a month, and you can have a phone number that is local to you. This map that you see shows is widely used in the United States and in Canada. Sermon by phone. Try staying in contact with your folks, and especially those who do not have internet or those who don't want to deal with Zoom and YouTubes and Facebook. And you get a local phone number. If you want to try it, just make note of this. Call 1-757 970 9999 and you'll hear a demo. And you want to go on to their particular site, sermonbyphone.com, and get all the information. Now, we are using Zoom today. This is how you and I are sharing information, sharing uh, songs. The Zoom is a simple video conferencing messaging system, and it allows for multiple viewers. As I said, we've got in excess of 175 on, and meetings can be recorded and uploaded to YouTube or Facebook at a later time. Facebook is probably one of the most popular, especially with their young people. What we are using at Orleans United happens to be YouTube Live. There are 2 basic ones that are available. The things to consider: the internet capability is run very well, and it doesn't change our basic church culture. And be who you are as simple as possible. Now, there is a number of churches that are looking at upgrading their basic systems and forming a cluster. Is there any concerns, questions? I'm here to help you from a technical point of view. And if you want to send me an email, my name, david.patterson@consultant.com. So after the meeting, if there's any of you that would like some assistance trying to figure out what communications would be available to you or what you could make use of, I'm here to help. If I don't have the answer, I believe I have quite a good contact list. I have people that can help you. Dave Clemis and I work together at Orleans United, and Dave is an IT person. I also have contacts here with Gary. So between the technical people within the EOR area, I'm sure that we can find somebody to help you along the way. So I'm going to close this one right now, stop sharing. And Eric, if you'd like to continue.
Yeah, so I just saw it pop up in the chat. Grant Dillenbeck is asking about TikTok, and which is a good sort of segue into the next question that I wanted to, and David and I wanted to ask the group. Now that you've got sort of both sides and we've whetted your appetite, this would be a great time for you, people that are out there, to either in the chat or just to dive in and unmute yourself. What kinds of things would you like to discuss? Are there any specific questions before we move forward? So, for example, David, are you familiar with TikTok?
No, I'm not. I don't use it.
Okay, so
Actually,
that would
if I ask my grandkids, they can probably tell me a lot.
right.
A question about a person with hearing loss. And can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Uh, Using Wi-Fi earphones or not? Can you connect with Wi-Fi to either a YouTube service or Zoom or whatever?
I guess something that maybe Eric, you might be, or pardon me, Gary, because um, I've not actually experimented very much with you with the Bluetooth. I've got Bluetooth earphones and some devices, but one thing I was experimenting with, or going to experiment with at our church, is whether or not we could get a multiple Bluetooth so that people with hearing aids could make use of it that way. But I'm afraid I don't have an answer on the Bluetooth now, but that's something I can research and get back to you if you just send me a link.
Well, David, I can actually answer that because
Okay.
in my work doing therapy with clients at St. Paul's University, you know, I'm on actually on my third set of earphones. I tried cheap ones, and what I would recommend to people is that you not go Bluetooth. If you're going to plug into a computer, I have a hardwired USB connection, if that means anything to anybody. These are professional quality phone headphones. I find it makes a tremendous difference to be able to use them. I use them because I'm doing video therapy, and it even the intonation of the voice changes. With Windows 10, there are lots of bugs apparently with the use of Wi-Fi and back and forth communication, and so that's why I went to a hardwired USB connection. Does that answer your question? The only thing I'll add is price point is for these ones here is in at about the $125 to $150 range. There are other options that are available for less. I would seriously recommend staying away from anything if if you have the means, that anything under the price of $50. You really do pay for what you get.
We paid $100 for a Bluetooth Wi-Fi set.
And how are you finding it?
It can be made to work for FaceTime,
Right.
and we're now trying to coordinate it with uh, Google Duo.
Okay.
And after that, our church services are by YouTube Live, so live and recorded. So those are the three things that we would like to use it with.
I guess part of the issue is that the computer you are using, um, that is, you're playing back your YouTube, whether or not the computer has the Bluetooth capability, you would have to turn that on. And then then you would have to match it or link it to your headphones.
So
It's my husband who has the hearing loss. It's me who is not a techno person who is trying to accomplish this.
With some hearing aids, in fact, I have a hearing aids that has the Bluetooth capability. I'm of that age where I need a little assistance in my hearing, and I use it fairly often. And I can also have a device on my phone that helps to link it in to my hearing aids. So there's a number of
We'll
technical solutions.
we'll explore that.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay, Eric, did you?
Well, I mean, I see that there's a vibrant discussion going about tech solutions in the chat, and that's lovely. That's really, David, beyond my experience. Is there any other questions in terms of concerns? I would be actually curious to know, how are you all feeling out there, whether you're in a city like my friend Barbara Reynolds, who's out at Glencairn, which is a well-established suburb of Ottawa, to congregations like the one I serve in Buckingham, Quebec, which is really on the other end of the area where some people just don't even have the bandwidth. Where in Buckingham, we've gone to snail mail, and I mail out twice monthly short 3-page Reader's Digest sermons, as a form of pastoral care and community connection. It'd be interesting for me to hear some of the stories that we're experiencing, the joys, the challenges, frustrations.
Actually, Gary, I see Paul Wynot would like to speak up. Paul, if you want to unmute,
Yeah, thanks, David.
good to see you.
Eric, my situation is similar to yours. I'm serving Queel right now.
Right.
Fortunately, I was able to take over a Facebook Live service from Stefan Vermette when he moved on last summer. It's been a good experience, and each week we try to expand and bring more people in and make it very, and as you were talking earlier, it's very me and them to me and back and forth, so it's a very personal service. One of the things we covered is we couldn't do it in our church because there was no technology there. So I set up a bit of a worship space in my house and an online studio. And you're right. I tried to go cheap at start and realized I couldn't do that. I had to get a good camera and that sort of thing. The challenge I'm having now is, how do we do pulpit supply? How do I get someone to fill in so I can take a break for a few weeks? Been almost a year since been doing this online, and frankly, just looking to take a couple of weeks off, but I have no idea how to do pulpit supply when I'm leading worship online every week. I can't sort of hand over my studio, or how does that work? Do we have a list of people in the area who can do it?
Well, that's a good question, and that would be on an aside. I'll bring it back to the LLWL committee, of which I'm a member. Okay, so
Oh,
that's a great
wonderful.
that's a great question. What I would suggest on the short term, and it's the solution that check out the phone thing,
Okay.
and then what I would really suggest, okay, just here, okay, is that if you are doing pulpit supply, um, invest the money. Invest the money to mail out the sermons, and have your pulpit supply person, if they're capable of doing it, submit a written text and spend the money. I mean, when you really think about it, for I mean, it's a dollar plus the photocopy cost, right? So if I'm sending out 30 messages, it's $30. If I put 2 in there, then it's $15 per. At the end of the day, really, that's a small price to pay for, okay? And one of the things that I found, Paul, is that it has opened up avenues to pastoral care that
Mhm.
and because it's brought people back to their core story, right? We understand. Could somebody let James in, please? We understand, like, what the necessity of that is. um in terms of, the psychology of resilience and how we reach people, we need to reach people at their most basic, regardless of their situation,
Yeah.
right?
Has opened up.
So does that answer your question, Paul?
Well, sort of. I appreciate reaching out to the LI because I would like to know if there's someone who'd be willing to take over online worship. But one of the things that I've implemented with Quio is there are some people who don't have the internet capacity. And so each week I deliver DVDs of the service to them.
Okay.
And it gives me a chance to connect, even if it's at their front door distance with mastodons. At least we have a chance to a few minutes to talk each week. And because they don't have the technical connections, that seems to be even more appreciated, that come to their door and just say hi once a week with a DVD in my hand saying, here you go.
Right. So that's like a throwback to the old tape ministries, right? When congregations had enough money for high-speed dubbing machines, right? I think the piece that I'm trying to add today is to not be overwhelmed by the tech. Like in my kitchen cabinet company, right? So when we go onto site and we're sitting there and you're doing a reno and all of a sudden, like in every reno, there's a problem. Or you're walking in and if in a new build, I've seen this before, the doorbell is actually in the wrong place and you can't put up the pantry. Okay. My business partner sort of says, in a moment like that, where you literally are under a time crunch, the kitchen's got to be in by a certain hour, right? You must find the most direct solution possible.
Right.
So if I haven't thought out how I'm going to get all the dubbing equipment to burn CDs, but I have a typewriter and a photocopier or a computer, right? And then you just get started. Okay. And so the pastoral side of this presentation is not to be overwhelmed by tech. It's to start thinking about how I connect, and then the tech solutions comes. And that's why a guy like David can come in.
Paul, may I suggest, Paul, that you and Quio could always join us for Bible study every day of the week and Sunday in Shawville. Shawville United would more than welcome you, etc. If you needed a break.
And that's one of the things we were looking at is suggesting other services that the people from Quio might join while I take a couple of weeks off. And so that's the fallback. But we have a very personal worship service each Sunday, and I'd like to continue that if possible. But
Paul,
I appreciate your point that we need to think outside the box. How many different ways can we connect and go back to the basics?
Yeah.
Can I just say what we do at our church?
Okay.
I've been doing through this whole thing and haven't been able to get in, but it was very simple. What we do is we have ours on Facebook. We have a Facebook, and then it's recorded. We had to go to pre-recording it because of issues with the internet, doing it live. But what we do is when the minister has to go away, then we have a link to another person's service that they can go on, and we've asked them if we can ahead of time. And the people that don't have internet, because of where we live, a lot of people cannot get the internet even if they wanted to. Our elders go door to door every week with the sermon in writing and say hi and stuff from a distance. And we also, anybody that has email, it's emailed to them. So either emailed or handed in person. And then for the people watching online, a link when the minister's away to another person's service.
This is a wonderful sharing here because, Paul, just to give you an example, Dave Clemens has been doing some remote Zoom worships thing, so he might be able to fill in for you on a Sunday or so. The fact that people are sharing, Rothwell United, they get together, call it a coffee time or whatever, or chat time with all their people on Zoom. And Molly Bell has created a Sunday school where she can get on there with the children, all using Zoom because the children are getting used to it through school. So they do it 5 days a week, and they can help the parents and grandparents if there's any issue. But sharing between congregations, between communities, like there's no competition here. We're here to support and help each other. So if there happens to be a congregation next door or down the road or the other side of the world that you can share with, this is a great. But by using Zoom, because our children are using it, I have 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 6 grandchildren that are all. This is how they spend their day, and it's also a way that I can communicate with them because I can't go near them. I can't even I can't give them a hug, but I can give them a hug over Zoom. So using electronics Um, all the things on Zoom can also be on Facebook and other communications. So it's Zoom couldn't have happened at a better time. Um, so it gives us that. So Eric, I'll switch it back to you.
Yeah. So the um, there was a woman who just came up, and in the way that I'm configured, I didn't know who was speaking about the multiple things about sending links, but still sending written sermons out.
It's
Um,
Janet Gaylord, and it's Lansdowne United Church.
Thank you, Janet, for
You're
that
welcome.
for that intervention, because as I was listening to you talk, I remember the summer days when minister would go away for a month, and that created sister congregations, and people would go to the cottage if you were that kind of a person or whatever it was, and then two congregations would shrink down to the size of one, but it created this anticipation of summer relationships, right? There are a certain number of people who would remember these kinds of things. And I think that that's just a repeat now using tech of the same idea. That the idea is that if I'm going away, and there is no pulpit supply, there's no shame in saying to my congregation back 20 years ago, well, just drive down the road and you can go there. And I'll name the elephant in the room, right? The tension 20 years ago was, yes, we'll get close, but we won't get too close, because our building is our building and their building is their building, and that kind of thing, right? The way I see that translating is that it says, oh my goodness, if Carleton Memorial United Church and St. Andrew's United Church don't have the capability or access to their building, then I need to link on to what Orleans United Church is able to provide for me, that somehow that means that my congregations are failing. That's not true. The idea is that if we're meant to be a brotherhood and sisterhood, and I know that now we're in a and whatever a theyhood, to use affirming language, that we are a family. That the idea is, as it says in the book of Acts, everybody gave according to what they could give, so that everybody could have according to their need. If Paul Wynot needs to offload to somebody else, it doesn't mean that an LLWL, for example, can't come in and offer a personal message in writing. If that LLWL is much more comfortable writing something, a text, because there's going to be a whole bunch of people that are going to appreciate that. Which leads me to the last thing that I'll say, and I'll turn it back to anybody else, is that when you're talking about tech solutions, when you're talking about any solution in the church, that if you manage to please 80% of the people, that's a tremendous success. And yet it still means that 1 in 4 is not going to be served. So there's grief in that, isn't there? There's grief in not being able to reach out to everybody all the time. And my suggestion is that the more you can facilitate community discussion about how you're going to meet your needs and come up with little micro solutions to make up the 20%, the tighter you're going to find yourself as a community.
Eric, can I suggest that maybe we invite Gary McKay to give us an
Yes,
example?
I think that's a great idea.
Okay, and then I'll go over to some technical solutions hereafter. Gary?
Oh, thank you, David and Eric. A couple of the things that I wanted to mention, and some ways that we're handling it at Wesley United. Right now, Wesley United is between ministers. Our new minister doesn't arrive until May the 1st. So we've been using Pulpit Supply. So Paul, you might want to listen to this if you're interested in having Pulpit Supply come in. Now, at Wesley United, we've been doing audio recordings for years. We used to do a radio broadcast on Star 96 FM here in Pembroke, and they gave up on us a couple of years ago, probably about 10 years ago. And so we decided that we want to continue with this audio broadcast. How do we do it? Well, it was going to cost us too much to run a line down to Valley Heritage Radio in Renfrew. So we decided, let's just record the audio and put it on our website. And if anybody else wants it, we can always send them a stick or whatever. So we've been putting audio recordings on our website for years. So we thought during the pandemic we'll just continue to do that. We'll go with audio recordings, and what we're doing is we have our pulpit supply come in, stand at the pulpit, and our musician still comes in, and so they're reasonably distanced. You have me up in the sound booth, and I'll do the announcements because I keep a microphone up there now. And so you've got me up in the sound booth doing announcements. You've got the preacher in the pulpit doing the prayers and the message, and you have our musician doing playing the hymns. And what we did is so we have the musician play an intro, and then the preacher will read a couple of verses, and they kind of marry them together. The musician will play a little quieter, and the try and match the words with the music, and it just spoken, and so it gives people a sense of the hymn without having to without having to sing it solo for the preacher, because preacher might not necessarily be a high end singer, you might say. So that's one way we've been doing it. And for a couple of Sundays, we actually just patched it all together. When things got really serious in the middle of January, we had a preacher at home send a recording to me. We had our musicians go into the church and prepare a recording, send it to me, and then I did the overlay with the announcements and that sort of thing. The only trouble with that is it took me 3 hours to make a 1 hour service. I'd much rather go to the church and do it all at once in the 1 hour.
They look
But,
to be in good shape. Eh?
So it was.
Sorry, I'm not on mute.
It was an interesting. It was an interesting thing putting all the voices and service together. One thing that we did that was kind of exciting. We have a close relationship with a number of churches in the Upper Ottawa Valley here. So last Sunday, we kind of broke some new ground, and we did a Zoom church service. So what we had is we had a laptop in the sanctuary of Wesley United, not recording, but viewing and bringing in the audio of the two musicians, the music directors from both Calvin United Church and from Wesley United Church. We had the preacher, who is part-time at Calvin and part-time at Wesley right now, at her home on Zoom. And she and the minister from Deep River, not United Church, Deep River Community Church, and they handled. They actually preached the sermon together. They interacted back and forth, and again, I was using that spotlight function to make sure that whoever came in on Zoom, and we had about 20 people view the service. So that they could see, as you see, I've got the three spotlights on here right now, and the spotlighting works well. So the big issue with having music go out live over Zoom is that Zoom is not designed for music. Zoom out of the box, so to speak, it compresses the audio a fair amount. I'm getting a bit technical here, but compressing the audio ruins music. It doesn't hurt voice too much because we have a fairly limited range of our speaking. If we were singing, it might be a different thing. But Zoom is designed for one person speaking at a time. And so if you want to have Zoom, if you want to have some music playing in the background, first of all, the compression just totally ruins the resolution of the music. It's really horrible. And so what you have to do is there are settings in Zoom. You don't suppress the background noise. For instance, music is considered background noise. I am speaking here, but if there was somebody playing a piano in the background, Zoom is going to try and eliminate that. So what you do is you try to you reduce the amount of background elimination. I'm using a double negative here. So you're allowing the background noise, and that's a setting that you can do in Zoom. The other thing is you can turn on original sound, which stops the compression and allows the music to come through quite well. And when you share a video, as was this morning when we were watching the worship was done with a video, that is kind of done automatically. When you share that video, the sound is set up so that it comes through well. But there are settings that you can do, and if you're not familiar with those settings, don't hesitate to get in touch with me, and we can. I can tell you
Yeah.
how to do that. It's not that difficult.
Gary, maybe that's something that you could just share and put up on the EOR website. So instructions for the setup.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
David.
Yeah.
So
Go ahead.
I wanna just bring back, if it's okay with you, that I've had in the chat seen comments from two rural ministries, and being sort of sensitive to the fact that what we want to make sure is that we don't want to discourage people. Not that Gary's being discouraging, but to remind people that the core of the message is today, regardless of the tech solutions that you have in front of you, whether it's a telephone or it's a car or it's a word processor and a photocopier, that should not be a source of discouragement. It's easy to get overwhelmed by all the tech. And I'm not, and again, that's not to disparage what Gary is saying by any stretch of the imagination, because I think what Gary is sharing is the wonderful example of what Orleans United Church has done for my ministry personally. And this is coming back to what Paul has said, and that I have allowed because Orleans has all the equipment, and I don't have to work. Because I am not a tech person. I'm a guy that when word processors came in, I went to go see my journalism prof and said, this will never take, because a word processor is not a typewriter. It's the personal connection, and it's to make people feel like they're not alone, that they're loved, that they belong, that they're children of God, and they're useful. And it doesn't matter how you do that. So if Orleans doesn't step in with the tech solutions, then I have to worry about the tech solutions. Because Orleans steps in with the tech solutions, I had a whole mental health ministry that sometimes was reaching up to 1,000 people a week. And my pastoral care hasn't suffered. And because I don't worry about these things. Right? And the cluster that we've been able to form, and the amount of encouragement that it's given volunteers. So to the folks that are sitting in the rural areas, right? What I'm going to tell you is get back to what you remember. Go, if you know, the summer exchanges, the circuit ministry, and figure out the simplest way to do that. And if your people are worried that they're getting left behind, you just say, no, actually, there's a whole bunch of spirituality and psychology that says you're not. And I'm going to get off my pulpit now and turn it back to you, David, because I'm conscious of time. We're at 10:48 now.
Yeah, okay. If we can, I'll just quickly go through some of the technical issues for those who may be interested, and see that I've got the right screen here, and share that. And hopefully that's going to work. And get back here. So if I start through some of the basic, as Eric was talking about, Virch was created as a cluster of United Churches in the east end of Ottawa and Gatineau, Queenswood, St. Paul's Eastern, Carleton Memorial, St. Andrews, Buckingham, Mackay, Rothwell, and Orleans United. It's been a wonderful ministry. I've learned an awful lot. All the clergy and the lay people from these churches have come together and shared their gifts. And once a week, Sunday morning at 10 o'clock. The service starts on YouTube, and it's there forever. It's up. We've got actually about 3 years of services that are up. The Zoom ministry. This is how a lot of churches are doing it. They even during the week or on the weekend, being able to share over coffee time, tell stories, share good news, whatever. It's a very simple operation. So I'm just going to quickly go through this. I learn from others. I'm all over the internet, and Novell United Church is one that I really enjoy going to. And I also deal with Peter Woods at Mackay. I love his sax music. And Kimberly Heath from Wall Street. And Anthony Bailey. As I say, I go all over. Paul Levy at Novell United. I get a message from him every day. And so, and the music out at Carleton Memorial United Church in Vancouver. This is, I guess, being retired, this is what I do to have fun. If you want to get information, a lot of information, there is a dedicated magazine, which is available to you free of charge, digitally, Technologies for Worship. And there's all kinds of, this is what the big guys do with lots of money, but it shows you some ways that some of the more cost-effective technology is available. There is a website on Facebook called Churches That Live Stream. If you go on Facebook and just put in Churches That Live Stream, there's a group. There's about 500 people on there right now, and they meet every Tuesday night and share ideas. Now here's a typical setup where you have a video switcher, an audio controller, and a camera controller. This is quite typical of most churches. This almost the identical setup that I have at Orleans. But if you want to learn, there's people from rural areas, metropolitan areas, all kinds of that are sharing what they're doing, and they're learning from each other. So go to Facebook. Churches, actually, the Canadian Churches That Live is the real issue. Okay, and here's a typical how somebody records presentations. If you have an iPad, believe it or not, an iPad is a complete communications thing. It has a camera, it has a display, you can record. And this is how a lot of people, in fact, there's probably several people this morning that are using an iPad. You can use your cell phone. A lot of our ministers at home are recording their prayers, their sermons, and everything on iPhones. Send it to me. Here's a typical system. Now, this is a system that's being used at Smith Falls United. It's multiple cameras or wireless. You can have up to 8 cameras, all controlled on an iPad. Now, the technology is the stained glass of the 21st century. It's what we use today to paint the pictures and articulate, tell the stories of the gospel. And in times like these, where people are not even coming inside the buildings, this couldn't be more true. And so our basic systems, we use cameras, we use memory sticks to record. Small switchers are available to interconnect between cameras and computers for your PowerPoint presentations. Cameras are not all that expensive. You probably already have a lot of cameras. A lot of single lens reflex cameras have the audio video capability. Cell phones. Most people have got a cell phone. iPads. You can get the consumer type cameras for in order of $200 to $300. That's all you need. This is a couple of the cameras that I'm using. I have remote control, pan, tilt, zoom, and I have a portable camera. I do editing. Wondershare is what I use. Dave Clements and I use the same software. It works out to about $100 for a 2-year subscription, which gives you a lifelong connection. Here's a quick snap of the YouTube site where you can go back up to 3 years and see all of our services, our music. And this is typically what I have at Orleans. I have an audio console, I have a video switcher, I have 3 cameras, the computer that does the PowerPoint is connected to it, and I do my live streaming. So very small systems. You just need a microphone and a camera. That's all you need. If you want to get a little more sophisticated, you can have more cameras and a larger audio. And if you got the money, you can go all the way. And I want to thank you. And as I've learned from Eric, be blessed, be a blessing. Eric, back to you.
Yes. All right. Just thanks to Gary for adding what's possible, and thanks to David for his sort of synopsis that the idea is that when a synergy and cooperation happens, great things happen. If you want to get there fast, go alone. If we want to go far, beyond and as my friend said, get to the promise that we're not quite sure where that is yet, just like the people who entered the desert for the first time. We've got to find a way to go together. For me, the greatest blessing that I'm getting from this is that it is possible to overcome the divide, even in this country. Like, we're told that there's a rural versus city divide. Part of our calling, I think, in the United Church is on the ground in the country of Canada, is to learn how to keep feeding people spiritually, so that we do not leave people behind. So thank you for today. It's been a real blessing to be with you.